up, dudes? HW here. Last video, I talked about making my delay into just a huge switch. And that's really what I'm after and what I try to do and how I've been setting it up. I have picked this up from years ago. I kind of started with a galloping thing that was in series, and then later I turned it into a wider stereo thing, but still keeping the gallop. Let me explain. I just want my delay as my default to just be like a big switch. So here's my normal delay with nothing else kind of on it. Let me show you. This is like my on all the time, like I forget that it's even there. That to me is a delay that never gets in the way. Like that's my dry sound. That's just how I do it, right? I do have like on my Kemper, I have a performance setup where I can really quickly kill all the wet effects with like an extra button. And I do that sometimes. If I'm playing rhythm with another guitar player, I try to be really tight. But when it's just like, when it's a 4 or 5 piece and you're live, you know, for me, there's a time to be small. There's a time to really have like maybe a very thin tone. And I think that's more when there's an engineer who's like able to pick out parts and really place them places. I think that's more in like a recording setting. But when you're live within a 4 or 5 piece band, you know, maybe you got acoustic and, you know, drums, bass, maybe you got keys. And other than that, it's just guitar. That's where it's like, your only option is to be big. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else you would do. There's not that much musically happening where things are kind of going to be in your way, I think. So, you know, guitars are such dynamic instruments. I one time heard a sound guy training another sound guy. He was a really knowledgeable sound guy. And he was telling the other sound guy, he was like, this fader controls your dynamics. It was the guitar fader. And he was like, guitars are the dynamic instrument. If you want more dynamics, roll up the guitars. They make the quiet parts quieter and ethereal and lush. They make the louder parts just banging and going. The bass is going to pick it up, but you know, look, the bass, no matter what, they're probably playing one note, right? It's like the guitars really change the sound and really just dynamically, I think they do so much. Anyway, I'm looking for that huge switch. So that's my sound there. What am I doing? I go after an eighth and a dotted eighth just to give you some. Right? That eighth and that dotted eighth run into each other. They don't run into each other. They're on opposite sides, but. Right? Dun, 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 dun. That's what it always reminds me of. Feedback 35, 36. What are we really hearing? I can barely hear a third repeat. So I hear 1, 2, and I can barely hear this little. Right? Just that extra little. I can barely make it out, right? And then mix, it's really low, you know? It's just not in the way. Now, if you turn it off, you can hear the dry guitar. That's an effect. Like dry is an effect. But this just sort of, it's just like sloshes the whole thing together. It makes that rhythmic breaks, those breaks a lot more just less noticeable and just swashes it all sort of together. There's some movement. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't. I tend to like it, especially live. It just gives a very big sound. Now, when I hit my little delay switch down here, something happened. I moved this delay up. Let me turn off the second delay so you can hear what's going on. Now we've got this. Now I hear right? And then And that's the eighth on the one side going, right? It's just the eighth doing its thing. The dot eighth is doing its thing, but we got the feedback. Now I can hear 3 and 4. I can hear those. And I like that. And then on the mix, you know, to me, that's about half as loud. You know what I mean? It's about half as loud. But what I really notice and what I try to do is this high cut is over here around 2,500. That's where I like to put it. I had it at 26, but 25. Because I really want to take out the treble, you know? Now, why do I want to do that? Because my Vox AC30 on its own, it's got a lot of high-end presence. It's got the snap and the lush harmonic kind of thing going on. That is just my favorite tone in the world, man. Now, and that's the free download. Free download below, you get this capture, 66 AC30B OD1. You come over here and you got this dual delay, okay, and it's doing its thing, but I never use it without this. So what I have is I have the off, or my dry sound, which isn't really dry. But it doesn't really get in the way. Flip that thing on. And I like it at a time. I don't always tap in the time on everything. Sometimes I just play one song into another, and if the time's cool, it's cool. A lot of times the times are, you know, close enough that it's not like really off, but I like it being a little faster, a little slower. That gives it a very analog flavor. But listen what's happening now. It's like, now there's almost like an accent on the beat that doesn't have a, you know? It's like ba 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 ba. I love that. I mean, that's so cool. I dig that. So what's happening here? Well, we've still got the eighth and the dotted eighth, and they're on each side, right? We got an eighth and a dotted eighth over here, right? But then when we put in this quarter, now what are we doing? Well, we got the eighth hitting, and then when the second eighth is going to hit, when you're going to get the second repeat of the eighth, the other delay hits from the very first, it's a quarter. So it lines up with that second eighth. And so you get first eighth, now you're getting another hit, and then it's going to repeat what it gets. So you're going to get another eighth coming in. So it's going to be on the eighths, but it almost then accents the quarter, because that one's going to be louder and brighter because we're not cutting off the high end. That eighth is cutting off the high end, but when the quarter note gives its first repeat, it's on the second eighth, and it's going to be a little brighter. So it creates this accent feel, but also it starts repeating the eighths. So those eighths carry on longer because each eighth repeat is then being repeated by the quarter note, one quarter note later from the original repeat. And then you get the dotted eighth on the other side, and you get a dotted eighth, but then when the second dotted eighth hits, you're going to get right before that, the quarter note is going to hit, and then you're going to get the second dotted eighth will hit right after the quarter. That'll be the next subdivision on that side. So it'll be dotted eighth, quarter will hit, then you'll get the second dotted eighth. And then I have no idea what happens after that because the quarter starts repeating. So now we're a quarter after so the next one should be I don't know. I guess you get the first dotted eighth, then the quarter note repeat, then you'd get the second repeat from the dotted eighth. Then you'd get, I think, the quarter repeat of the first dotted eighth. I have no idea what subdivision that would be. It's not a dotted fourth. It's longer than that, right? Because the eighth would be half of its value longer. I don't know. I've never figured that out, but it sounds like this. And I just love that. And so I think it gives you this big sound. Now, for me, it sounds like this. To me, the reason I call it like a huge sound is it's doing a couple things. One, it's making my guitar sound big, right? And adding all this extra stuff around the notes and still allowing my notes to come out. I mean, listen. Because I'm rolling off all that top end, you can still hear all the notes I'm playing. But it does another thing. It really evens out. It really evens out chords and single notes, because single notes, you still hear them as single notes, but you start to hear like the repeats of a past single note, and it starts to create like this like diatonic arrangement kind of thing where it's really, there is a chordal value there. But because it's just like lines and it's repeating and it's darker, it doesn't hit your ear like more than one note is playing. Even though you're hearing the extra, the past notes I've played, it doesn't quite hit like, see how that has like a messy feel? And that's me playing. I mean, it works, but you know, when you just play the single note stuff, it doesn't get in the way at all, because you've got this bright sort of center tone and you've got the movement around it. And yes, some stuff's happening because it's happening on the sides, you know, the middle is whatever's happening on both sides. So, you know, you've got this stuff happening around it, but because that's changing, it really allows that stuff to come out. And that's what I think is great. And so it's acting like as a compressor in a way, because I think of a compressor as evening out my smaller sounds and my big sounds, right? And how I think of that on guitar is smaller chord voicings and single notes. It sort of makes big enough that it's a single note, but it sounds big like the chords, you know? But this does the same thing because it... I mean, it just does that. You know what I'm saying? It has that sort of characteristic, making things just big. And I like it. One of the reasons I set up the subdivisions like this is I like to tap like 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? That's cool, and I dig that. But look how slow that is. Right? But what I like to do is, right, if I go 1, 2, I go 1, 2. And I like to do that. I like to go I like to tap eighths, and then I like to slow down the last eighth, right? So I go 1, 2, right? I go 1, 2, just a little slower. And then I use that a lot of times for my lead stuff. That's when I like to sort of come in here and go. I mean, that to me is cool, having the movement, just, not quite super in time. We're not the Edge, you know what I mean? I'm not really trying to do that thing completely, but it just sounds great. So that's how I think about it. That's how I try to set up my delays, like a huge switch. And that's how I just kind of treat it, is I want it to make my guitar huge without it running away and being its own thing. That ambient thing is cool. I want to just make my guitar sound big, like the heavens are opening and it's just like, whoa, is Jesus playing an Edge of Breakup AC30? And I want the answer to be yeah. He might be. I don't know. Maybe he's got a matchless. I'm not sure. He's got a Gabriel tone. All right, that's enough. I've been HW.